Ever wondered what could happen if you helped somebody take drugs? In this video, I'm going to be going over the case of the Crown and Rodgers, where a heroin addict helped his friend inject and was later charged with manslaughter when he died. In England, back in 2001, when I was walking around in my Blink 182 hoodie, two heroin addicts were involved in an incident that I think has recurred a lot of times around the world when it comes to addicts and abusers. On the afternoon of July 22nd, 2001, Stephen Rodgers and Michael Tippett got very drunk on cider. Tippett went away to buy heroin for the two men and returned at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon with two 100ml syringes half filled with heroin. Tippett injected Rodgers with one of the syringes half filled with heroin, and in return, Rodgers held a tourniquet around Tippett's arm so that Tippett could inject himself. Tippett collapsed due to cardiac arrest immediately after taking the heroin and died 8 days later. Rather than chalk the events up as an unfortunate occurrence, Stephen Rodgers was charged for the death of Tippett. His charges were administering poison, an offence under an 1861 Act of Parliament in England, and manslaughter. This case fell into a spate of big cases that were going on at the time concerning addicts helping each other take heroin. And to cut through the technical parts of the case, I'll just say that it was agreed between the prosecution and the defence that the key part of this case was whether the act of holding the tourniquet was so close to the act of injecting heroin that they were basically the same. Because if Rodgers had injected Tippett himself, it would have clearly been manslaughter, and that had been decided by a previous case. As an aside, if you're interested in catching that upload or other similar uploads, be sure to subscribe. But by holding the tourniquet, how close was Rodgers to the action that took Tippett's life? This was a question for the court. This is important because in order for the charge of manslaughter to work, the prosecution needed them to be the same thing, really. They needed the holding of the tourniquet to almost be indistinguishable from the injection. So much so that the prosecution argued that the application of the tourniquet was part and parcel of the unlawful act of administering heroin, such that there was no difference from holding the end of the syringe while the deceased pressed the plunger. The defence said that this was wrong, but both the trial judge and the Court of Appeal agreed with the prosecution. They held that active participation can indeed cause someone to fall foul of the 1861 Act and be convicted of manslaughter. Stephen Rodgers was sentenced to 3 years in prison. This is a somewhat light sentence because the sentence ranges for manslaughter vary between 1 year in prison and 24 years. This case is a bit shorter than some of the others that I've covered, but it does pose an interesting question. How far away from a drug-related fatality does someone have to be to escape liability, to escape criminal responsibility for it? In this case, physically helping someone by tying a belt around their arm to act as a tourniquet was held to be too close. But what about other actions? What about selling someone drugs? What about buying somebody drugs? Giving someone drugs? What about pressuring someone to take drugs? How close are all of those actions to a potential drug-related death? Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to catch the answer to those questions. Also, be sure to let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with the outcome that was reached, and let me know why. I'm always interested to hear what other people think about this kinds of thing. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.